Hello everyone, today I want to share an inspiring story, the story of how the English language opened the doors to my dreams, my passion, and ultimately my success. If you have big dreams, whether you want to become a doctor, an engineer, a lawyer, a business owner, or achieve anything extraordinary, then English is a necessity. Not maybe, not optional, but 100% essential. English is spoken by more than 1.5 billion people across the world. It is the language of global travel, international business, modern education, and the entire digital world. Without English, you might miss life-changing opportunities, better jobs, international friendships, global networking, or even the simple joy of experiencing movies, knowledge, and books in their original form. But here is the good news, you can start learning today. Anyone can learn. And if I could learn English and reach my dream, then so can you. Let me introduce myself. My name is Sophia, and I come from a small town in Brazil. My family was neither rich nor poor. We were a simple middle-class household. We had enough to live comfortably, but luxuries were far out of reach. My parents worked tirelessly. My father drove a taxi from morning till night, and my mother taught at a local school. They always reminded me that education is the biggest key to success. Since childhood, I carried only one dream in my heart, to become a doctor. And I remember the exact moment that dream became unshakable. I was just 10 years old when my younger brother fell seriously ill. His fever was dangerously high, and my parents were terrified. I still remember my mother's tears and my father's trembling hands. Then a doctor entered the room, calm, confident, and filled with kindness. In that moment, watching how he comforted us, how he gave hope to my parents, I decided, I want to become like him. I want to heal. I want to help. That moment shaped the rest of my life. He smiled gently and said, "Don't worry, I will take care of your son." I watched him closely. The confidence in his eyes, the softness in his voice, and the skill in his hands felt magical to me. He examined my brother carefully, gave him the right medicine, and explained everything to my parents with so much knowledge and calmness. And after just a few hours, my brother's fever dropped. He was safe. In that moment, I made a promise to myself, one day I will become a doctor, and I will save lives just like this man saved my brother. But as I grew older, a painful truth hit me. To become a doctor, you need English, not a little, but 100%. Every medical book is in English, every research paper is in English, and even in my own country, doctors needed English to study, to treat patients, and to work in hospitals. And my English was terrible. I studied in a public school where English was taught only for a few minutes a day. I knew simple words like hello or how are you, but the moment I looked at a full sentence, my mind went blank. I still remember one embarrassing day in school. My English teacher called me and said, "Sophia, can you read this sentence?" I stared at the page, but the words felt like they were dancing in front of my eyes. I couldn't read. I couldn't understand. My throat filled with tears. "I don't know, miss," I whispered. The whole class laughed at me. My cheeks burned with shame. That day, I went home and locked myself in my room. I sat silently, thinking, how will I ever become a doctor if I can't even read a simple English sentence? My dream felt impossible. I felt completely hopeless. But then, something happened that changed my entire life. One evening, my father returned home, exhausted after a long day of driving his taxi. He saw my sad face, sat beside me, and softly asked, "Sophia, what is bothering you? You look unhappy every day." That one conversation became the turning point of my life. I looked at my father with tears in my eyes and said, "Papa, I want to become a doctor, but my English is so weak. Without English, I can't study medicine." My father sat silently for a long moment, thinking deeply. Then he said something that surprised me completely: "If English is the only thing stopping you, then learn English. Go to a place where everyone speaks it." I was shocked. "But Papa, we don't have the money for that." He smiled softly and replied, "We may not have much, but we have enough. And your dreams are worth every sacrifice." That night, my parents and I sat together and discussed the best place in the world to learn English. We finally chose Canada, and for good reasons. 1. Everyone speaks English there, so I would have no choice but to use it every single day. 2. Canada has one of the best education systems for language learning. 3. It is a multicultural, welcoming country where students from all over the world feel safe and supported. 4. Compared to the USA or the UK, Canada was more affordable and a realistic option for our middle-class family. Even then, it was not an easy decision. We were ordinary people with limited savings. Yet my parents made the biggest sacrifice of their lives. They used almost all their savings to pay for my flight, my English classes, and my first months of living abroad. The night before I left, my mother held my hand tightly and whispered, "Sophia, we are giving you everything we have. Promise me you will never give up." I hugged her and said with all my heart, "I promise, Mama." And so, with one small suitcase, a little money, and a giant dream inside my chest, I flew to Canada. The moment I stepped out of the airport in Toronto, I felt like I had landed on another planet. The cold wind hit me like ice. In Brazil, the weather was always warm, but here my fingers turned numb instantly. The food looked unfamiliar, and I missed my mother's simple homemade rice and beans. People were kind, but they spoke unbelievably fast. And then came my first real challenge: English. At the airport, a man walked up to me and said, "Hey, do you need a taxi?" My heart started racing. I didn't fully understand him. I panicked. I just smiled nervously and said, "Yes." Then he asked, "Where to?" and I froze completely. My mind was blank. I didn't know how to answer. That was the moment I realized just how big this journey was going to be. I had no idea what the man at the airport said. My brain completely stopped working. I just stood there, confused, embarrassed, helpless. Finally, with a shaking hand, I showed him the address on my phone. He nodded, and I quietly followed him to the taxi. That night, in my small rented room, I cried. What am I doing here? I couldn't understand anyone. I felt lost, frightened, and for the first time in my life, completely alone. The next morning, I went to my English language school. The teacher smiled warmly and said, "Welcome everyone, let's introduce ourselves." When my turn came, I stood up with trembling hands. "My name? Sophia. I from Brazil," I said softly. I wanted to say more, but my mind went blank. My tongue felt heavy, and my words refused to come out. The teacher continued smiling, but I saw a few students laughing. I sat down with my face burning in shame. That night, I made a promise to myself: no matter how hard it gets, no matter how many mistakes I make. I will learn English. And that was the beginning of my real English learning journey. Those first few weeks in Canada felt like stepping into another universe, beautiful, exciting, but also absolutely terrifying. In Brazil, everything made sense. Here, I felt like a baby learning how to speak all over again. Even the simplest things felt confusing. Before I tell you how I improved my English, let me tell you about the strange things I noticed in Canada. First, no school uniforms. Back home, every student wore a uniform, but in Canada, kids wore anything they wanted, some even came to school in pajamas, and no one cared. Second, people didn't touch much. In Brazil, we hug, we kiss on the cheek, we stand close. But in Canada, people love personal space. If you hug someone without warning, they get uncomfortable. Third, the weather changed every few minutes. One moment it was sunny, the next moment it was raining or even snowing. I was shocked by the self-checkout machines too. In many stores, there were no cashiers. People just scanned and paid for their own groceries. And Canadians say sorry for everything. Even if you step on their foot, they say sorry. I found that so funny. The food portions were huge as well. I once ordered a small meal at a restaurant, but it looked like food for 3 people. But the biggest shock of all was the English. People spoke so fast, used slang I had never heard in school, and I felt like I would never catch up. All of this made life difficult, but it also made me stronger. I had learned proper English in school, but in real life people spoke completely differently. They used phrases like "wanna grab a coffee," "I'm down for that," and "that's so lit." Every time I heard these expressions, I felt lost, as if everything I had studied was useless. On my second day in English class, I was already nervous. The teacher gave us a simple writing task, and I felt confident while writing it. But when she returned my paper, it was full of red marks. She gently told me, "Sophia, your writing is good, but your sentence structure needs work. You think in Portuguese and translate into English, and that's why it sounds strange." Her words hurt, and frustration filled my heart. Speaking was even more difficult. I always knew the answer in my mind, but when I opened my mouth, no words came out. My mind froze, and I felt like crying. I wondered if I would ever speak English fluently. But I refused to quit. I knew that if I didn't improve, I would lose my dream of becoming a doctor. So I made a plan to fix my English. One trick I created was the headphone method. I was shy to speak in front of people, so I wore headphones and pretended I was talking on the phone while walking through the city. In reality, I was talking to myself in English. I described everything I saw: "I am walking on the street, the sky is blue, that woman is wearing a red coat, now I am entering a cafe." This helped me think in English and speak without fear. I also decided to learn 3 new words every single day and use them in sentences so they would stay in my mind. Another change I made was turning off subtitles while watching movies. I realized that with subtitles, I was only reading, not listening. So I forced myself to watch without them. It was difficult in the beginning, but slowly I started catching common words and phrases. One day, I pushed myself even further. I went to a coffee shop and told myself that today, no matter what, I would speak to someone in English. When I reached the counter, the barista smiled warmly and asked, "Hey, what can I get you today?" My heart began pounding so loudly it felt like the whole cafe could hear it. "Don't panic, Sophia, you can do this," I whispered to myself. I took a deep breath and finally said, "I would like a cappuccino, please." The barista smiled and asked, "Do you want it with almond milk or regular milk?" For the first time, I understood everything without needing extra time. I quickly replied, "Regular milk, please." She handed me the cup and said, "Here you go, have a great day." I smiled back and said, "You too." It was such a small conversation, but to me it felt like winning a gold medal. That moment taught me something powerful: English is not about being perfect, it's about being confident. But learning English was only half the battle. Surviving in Canada was another challenge. Canada is expensive, and every month my budget felt like a mountain I had to climb. I paid $800 for a small room that I shared with a roommate to save money. Groceries cost around $250, so I learned to cook simple meals at home. My transportation pass was $120, and my phone bill was another $50. The biggest expense was my English classes, $500 every month. To manage all this, I worked part-time in a small cafe. My days were exhausting, waking up at 6 a.m., attending school, working long hours, coming back tired, and still studying English late at night. I missed my family deeply, but whenever I felt like giving up, I remembered the sacrifices my parents had made. I couldn't afford to fail. The biggest turning point came when I finally stopped translating in my head. At first, my mind worked in slow motion. I heard a sentence in English, translated it into Portuguese, thought of an answer in Portuguese, and then translated it again into English. Every conversation felt like a puzzle. But after 4 months of daily exposure, something magical happened. One day at the grocery store, the cashier asked, "Do you need a bag?" And without any thinking or translating, I answered naturally, "No, I have one, thanks." For the first time, the response came directly from my mind in English. I realized I was finally thinking in English. This was one of the happiest moments of my journey. If you're struggling with English, here is my honest advice from experience. Speak every single day, even if you are alone. Use the headphone trick just like I did. Stop translating in your head and slowly push yourself to think directly in English. Talk to native speakers even if it scares you. And most importantly, surround yourself with English everywhere: music, movies, conversations, books, anything you can find. Change your phone, movies, and music to English. Surround your whole life with the language. 5. Don't be afraid of mistakes. Mistakes are not failures, they are signs that you are growing. And above everything else, never give up. I still remember the day everything changed for me, the day I realized, wow, I can actually speak English. But before I tell you that moment, let me take you deeper into my life in Canada, the struggles, the funny surprises, and how I slowly started sounding like a native speaker. By the time I had spent 6 months in Canada, my English had improved a lot. I could understand people better. I could order food without fear. I could talk to my classmates without freezing. But still, one huge problem remained: I was terrified of talking to native speakers. Why? Because they spoke too fast, used too much slang, and I always felt stupid when I didn't understand something. When someone talked to me, I often just said yes or laughed awkwardly, even if I didn't understand a single word. I was surviving, but not growing. One day, I told myself, Sophia, if you want to be fluent, you must face this fear. So I made a crazy decision. The next morning, I walked into my favorite coffee shop and gave myself a challenge. Today, you will have a real conversation with a native speaker. No running away. No fear. I stood in line, my heart beating fast. Then suddenly, a girl beside me smiled and said, "Ugh, this line is so long, right?" I froze. This was my moment. I took a deep breath and said, "Yeah, it's really long." She nodded and said, "I come here every morning and it's always like this." My brain started panicking, what do I say next? But instead of overthinking, I simply said, "Oh really? I just moved here, so I don't know." She smiled again and asked, "Oh cool. Where like that?" We had a real conversation. For the first time, I wasn't translating. I wasn't scared. I wasn't trying to be perfect. I was just talking. After that day, something clicked in my brain. I realized, I can actually do this. That moment gave me the confidence I had been missing all along. Once I became confident, I wanted more. I wanted to speak English not just correctly, but naturally, like a native speaker. So I started doing something that sounded crazy to everyone else, the shadowing method. Whenever I watched a TV show or movie, I paused, repeated the sentence exactly like the actor, and tried to match their accent, rhythm, and tone. For example, if the actor said, "Oh my God, that's insane," I repeated it exactly the same way, same pause, same expression, same energy. This practice changed everything. I paused and repeated the sentence exactly the same way, oh my God, that's insane." I copied the tone, the speed, and the emotion. I did this for hours every day. At first, it felt strange and even a little embarrassing, but after just 1 month, my pronunciation improved dramatically. I also started keeping a small notebook of my English mistakes. Every time I made an error, I wrote it down and corrected it. For example, I used to say, "I am agree with you," and I corrected it to, "I agree with you." By reviewing my mistakes daily, I slowly stopped repeating them. The hardest part, however, was forcing myself to make Canadian friends. I knew that talking to native speakers was the fastest way to improve, so I pushed myself out of my comfort zone. I joined local events, attended free meetups for international students, used conversation exchange apps to practice with Canadians who wanted to learn Portuguese, and started talking more with my co-workers. The more I spoke with real Canadians, the more natural my English became. Even though my English was improving, life was still very difficult. I was exhausted from studying, working part-time, and cooking my own meals. I missed my family and couldn't visit home because flights were too expensive. Even after 6 months, I constantly felt broke. One day, I checked my bank account and saw only $5 left. I sat in my tiny room and cried, asking myself why it was so hard and whether I was making a mistake. Should I just go back home? But then I remembered why I had come all this way. I didn't travel across the world just to give up. I wiped my tears and told myself, "No, I will make this work." Now, I want you to imagine waking up every morning in a beautiful apartment, looking out at the city skyline, drinking coffee, and thinking, "I made it. I did it. I became the person I always dreamed of." That is my life today, but 5 years ago, I was a struggling student with broken English, no money, and a heart full of fear. To get into medical school, I needed to pass the IELTS exam, and it terrified me. The reading section was full of long, confusing passages. The speaking section made me feel like the examiner could see straight into my soul. The writing section seemed impossible. I studied every day, wrote essay after essay, and recorded myself speaking until my voice grew tired. I read complicated medical articles every day, preparing myself for the big exam. On the day of the test, I walked into the room shaking with nerves, but then I whispered to myself, "Sophia, you didn't come this far to fail. You've worked too hard for this." I took a deep breath and gave it my all. A week later, I got my results. I held the paper in my hands and cried. I did it. I actually did it. That was the moment I knew nothing could stop me. With my IELTS score, I finally got accepted into one of the best medical universities in Canada. But the real struggle was just beginning. Medical textbooks were written in advanced English, professors spoke in complex medical terms, and I had to write flawless reports and deliver presentations. It was 10 times harder than anything I had faced before. But I remembered one truth: if I could learn English, I could do anything. I didn't quit. I recorded my lectures and listened to them every night, made flashcards for difficult medical terms, joined study groups, and practiced explaining concepts in English every single day. I pushed myself relentlessly, and all that hard work paid off. I graduated as Dr. Sophia Williams. I walked across the stage, took my diploma, and looked up at the sky, thinking, "This is for you, Mom and Dad." I made it. After graduation, I got my first job at a major hospital in Toronto. My first month's salary was $88,000. When I saw my bank account, I couldn't believe it. I remembered the days when I had only $5 left and had to choose between buying food or paying rent. Now, I could afford anything, but money was not the most rewarding part. The best part was saving lives. One day, a little girl came into the hospital, sick and scared, crying. I held her hand and said, "Don't worry, sweetheart, I'll take care of you." Her mother looked at me with tears in her eyes and whispered, "Thank you, doctor." In that moment, I felt something I had never felt before. I wasn't just an English learner anymore. I wasn't just a student. I was a doctor, and I had earned this. Listen carefully. Many people say, "Accept yourself as you are." I disagree. You should never accept being weak. You should never accept being average. You must change yourself, not for society, not for your friends, not for your family, but for you. Nobody is coming to save you. Not your parents, not your teachers, not your boyfriend or girlfriend. Only you can change your life. When I was struggling, I could have made excuses: English is too hard, I don't have enough money, I'm not smart enough. But I didn't. I looked in the mirror and said, "Sophia, stop making excuses. It's time to work." And that's exactly what I did. If you're still watching, it means you want more from life. Here's the truth: learn English like your life depends on it, because it does. If you want a great career, you need English. Stop being lazy. Open a book, watch English videos, put yourself in uncomfortable situations, talk to strangers, make mistakes, embarrass yourself. That is how you grow. Today, I live in a beautiful apartment in downtown Toronto. I wake up every morning proud of myself. I drive my dream car, travel to different countries, help my parents financially, and most importantly, I love my life. But I wasn't born lucky. I created this life through hard work, and you can too. If you're watching this, you have two choices. 1. Close this video and do nothing, stay the same, keep making excuses, keep dreaming but never acting. Or 2. Start working on yourself right now. Learn English every day, improve yourself, change your life. The choice is yours. If you choose the second option, subscribe to this channel, like this video, and let's start your journey today. Trust me, when you become the best version of yourself, it feels like the world is in your hands. Now go. Change your life.